Critical race theory is what all the cool kids are talking about these days. And by cool kids, I mean media pundits in the culture wars. These uh, these issues now get so much attention, but I suppose they always have. It's just taken on this kind of racial dynamic in recent years because Trump. And I guess we can thank him for not doing anything effective, unfortunately. Now, just to, save you time, my position on critical race theory is that it should not be taught to anyone, and we should stop wasting our time with this nonsense. Okay? Why do I say that? Now, if we look at it, this is an issue that has many sides, but if we reduce it to conservatives opposed to it and proponents of this ideological political theory, if it's just those two sides, the conservatives win this one for me. And I'll tell you why, but it's almost by chance that they get it right. Let's talk about the conservatives first. These folks are people who believe, on some level, maybe not all of them, in creationism. 10 years ago, they were advocating for creationism to be taught in school. What is creationism? It's nothing. It is nothing. There's nothing complex. Despite grifters like, I think, an Australian guy called Ken Hovind and others like him, there is nothing to creationism. At best, you can say, well, we were, there was nothing. Then God came and he just made people. And I guess he made everything else too, if you want to pretend there's no such thing as evolution. Okay. But what is there to teach besides that? There is nothing. Teaching evolution, on the other hand, is an integral part of biology. Without the understanding of evolution and the mechanism of natural selection and speciation, the creation of species and distinct kinds, as the creationists would call them, you can't get a fair or objective perspective on biology itself. It's integral to how things came to be. So teaching creationism is not only stupid, but by pushing back against evolution, you're making your students dumber. And you're limiting their own capability of thinking, of understanding, of critical thought. So I'm not actually a fan of conservatives when it comes to curricula. It's not like they get it right all the time. But they get this one right because on the other hand, on the other side of this argument, you have people who are primarily academics, which I think is one of the lowest forms of life, but that's another video. But you cannot trust academics to begin with. Okay, they choose their field of study and then try to apply everything through the lens of that field. The proverbial carpenter trying to nail everything down. Although I'm sure carpenters also use screws, right? So, on the other side, you have people who are just as disingenuous. And to go further into that, these people are obsessed with race. I think it's a self-selection thing, where you have experts on race and racial theory. So they have to make everything about race. And these people are obsessed with power. Not every academic wants power, but all of them are servants to power, one way or another. And that's what you're getting. You've got people, effectively, whose whole career, whose identity, whose professional identity revolves around race, racism, and power. As I understand it, and I'm not critiquing critical race theory here because I don't think it needs to be critiqued. Just like any other academic theory, let it, be confined to the halls of the ivory towers. But critical race theory is basically about how race and racism impact the legal reality of the world, shall we say. So, with regard to the US, it is a distinctly American system that's being critiqued. And it's a system that's based on a history of slavery and exploitation, of redlining and, white supremacy, as they call it. Unfortunately, I don't think that that's the critique about white privilege as well comes up. All of this serves to divide people, and to what end? Because those academics, in the end, they think they're fixing things, right? They think they're providing a solution. What they are is grifting for their, as a grifter I know this, they're grifting for their team, for their tribe, for their academia. They just want to get published and they just want to get paid. And once you have a few people like, I don't want to name names, but you have somebody who's misappropriated Malcolm X's X as a middle name, I think. Like, I don't know. Maybe maybe he does really have an X. Like maybe his middle name's Xavier. I don't know. I don't know any other X's, but anyway. There's also other grifters like a lady, I think a white lady, who's selling books about white privilege. Okay, gotta respect the grift. In any case, that is my critique, that the conservatives are basically opposing CRT from a reactionary perspective, and it's just luck that they happen to be right on this one. And the proponents are mostly serving themselves in this area of study that they've basically invented. Keep in mind, it was invented or, pushed by people in elitist institutions. Personally, my theory or my outlook on life is one of power. So, yeah, you probably don't have that much power if you're watching this video. Same as me, I don't have much power even though I'm making the video. But the critique is that these people are still very much privileged, and all they want, is to get power for themselves. Using these identities, using these labels, using their intersectionality. But effectively, that's what they're trying to do. Get power for themselves on an individual level. They're trying to change the system by getting to be in charge of a system that is slightly more in their favor with regard to how they look or whatever they purport to be. But they don't really care. In the end, they're not going to fix anything for you. So my critique is rather, in this case, with regard to I don't know what you call it, the application of CRT and the culture wars in general, these cultural non-issues practically. Because racism is still going to be real after you apply your CRT. It's not going to change. You're not addressing the real problem. You're addressing institutional racism, systemic racism, which is just how these academics want to get back on top, or get on top if they were never there to begin with. So racism will still be around regardless of how many people or how much diversity you infuse at the top layer of the pyramid scheme that is society. In fact, I feel that these culture wars, and this is not an original opinion, I feel that these issues are pushed to keep people busy, to keep them focused away from the real centers of power, and just have them focused on how they're being exploited individually. Mr. Bernard Sanders himself at one point made the mistake of saying, "White people don't know what it's like to be poor." What? Bro, you've been in government your whole life. You've got the silver spoon. Maybe it's a bronze one in your case because you won nothing. But how can somebody like Bernie Sanders, who has had a great income for the last 30 years, say something that senseless, that vapid, So that's the problem with these theories. They get people to look at them so deeply that they miss the forest for the trees. And the issue of class struggle, and again, I'm not really all about class. I'm really just anti-elite, as it were, because the power is where it's at, and that's the real issue. So in my opinion, don't let these superficial issues distract from the real problems at hand. The problems are problems with regard to the governance of society, of how we organize our communities. Okay, my simple solution for racism is to make friends with people of different backgrounds and recognize that they are people just like you, just like me. As long as we can communicate and express ourselves, and this is the storytelling or narrative aspect of CRT, we can see how that we all have similar problems in the end. Now, not so much if your problem is my yacht needs to be fixed. No. Or I don't have a yacht. Oh no. But that's the issue. So I guess that's it in a nutshell. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about my actual experiences. If you've enjoyed the video so far, I'd ask you to like, subscribe, and leave a comment about some other stuff I can talk about. I'm just talking about this one because it's the flavor of the week and I'm sick of seeing it and seeing how it distracts from real issues. Because at the end of the day, again, we have the same issues. Most people, the 99%, or at least the 90%, have the same issues. And as society becomes more exploitative, more imbalanced in the distribution of wealth, those issues are going to get exacerbated. I think so anyway. So my first experience with critical race theory was in college, and not in a class. I did not take any. I took intro to anthropology, so I learned about cultural relativism and the Trobriand Islanders, now that I recall. But it was in an extracurricular meeting with friends where I got to sit in and I was taught that, imagine this, me. I mean, Arab identity is its own thing, and I can talk about that. But I was taught that racism is, the standard line, power plus prejudice. So where does that put me in the scale? I mean, I have my prejudices. Do I have power? But that's the issue with these academic theories. CRT was meant to be, I think, a legal framework for people to critique, in the end, why color blindness is not okay, really. Why people need different standards. I personally believe that all citizens should have the same rights. All people within a community should be treated equally. That's to me the only way for us to get along in such a complicated and diverse world, this brave new world as it is. But I was told that, so I don't know. Can I be racist as an Arab? I suppose I can be racist in Arabia, but I am a victim in America. And, individual people might not be to blame, but they still benefit from the system. So they are to blame. Well, on this matter, I would say if there were an ethnicity that was overrepresented and too powerful in society, just like white people, but let's just say not necessarily white people, could you say that this group has too much power, even though they're a tiny percentage of the population? Or would that make you a bigot or a Nazi, even? I think that we're just allowed to claim that society is racist in North America. And it definitely is in Europe. Europeans, I'm sure, are pretty racist. But that the racism is there, and we're allowed to critique all white people on all these institutions because they default as white. So it's just okay for some reason to attack white people now, even though, as somebody will tell you, if you use a different ethnicity, there are plenty of white people who don't have any power, who don't really benefit from being white. Now you'll say, oh, well, they don't have as many obstacles as people of other ethnicities. Yes, okay. And I'm not opposed to the idea that we need to look at institutions and make sure they are colorblind. The issue with critical race theory and so many of these proponents of anti-racism is that they say that's not enough. They say you have to oppose the whole system. You have to be anti-racist. It's not enough to not be racist. You have to, I don't know, what is it? What do they want? Affirmative action? These policies can be applied on different levels, but to actually push it out to kids, first of all, is patently stupid. It's really wrong. You can teach them about history, you can teach them about sociology, social studies, and you can teach them to think critically. But I don't think that anybody should be indoctrinating children either way with regard to something as amorphous as race, which is just a phenotype. Now, some people will tell you that whiteness is pan-Europeanism, so on. You know, maybe it is. That's a fine label to it. Um, but I don't know. I think a lot of people, as I said, obsess about race, and once you pay them, these academics, to do it, they will make everything about race, to the detriment of real issues like class struggle, as it were, workers' rights, and so on. So, where was I? I was telling you about my college experience. Anyway, I was a little skeptical when I was told that, that's the way to go, power plus prejudice. Now I'm told that's the institutional racism or systemic racism. I'm not too concerned again because we can make basic rules about how to avoid this. But again, the critical race theory proponents are not okay with that. They tell you cannot just be colorblind. No, I think economic issues are where it's at, and I think that this is again a smokescreen. I'll talk about reparations in another video probably. I think we are closer to that than people realize. Not so much in terms of actually getting reparations, because I can assure you politicians will bungle this one up, or rather, they don't care. They will only use these issues when they need them. So, leftists would dangle the idea of reparations to get elected. So long as they have that card in their hand, they will not actually play it. And when it comes to actually playing the card, they will play it in a way that favors them and their political careers, their group's agenda, as it were. But actually applying fair reparations is going to be, shall we say, accessible by 2030. We would be able to, just to give you a sneak peek, we have the genetic testing to trace and track everybody around. We can get things to be redistributed in a fair way. Now, I don't really know if that's a solution to anything or if it'll just open a can of worms. Just want to throw it out there that the genetic factors will come into play. Other than that, if we are to look at how to address, I guess, or apply these racial theories, now I'm not a fan. I think, as I said, color blindness is probably the way to go. But it's clear that you can't trust people too deeply involved in this topic to be the arbitrators of these issues. So, what else have I got to say? Let me take a look at my notes here. I think I pretty much got everything I wanted to say. This comes down to power. I think people want you to be distracted by a non-issue because institutional racism can be remedied with bylaws, with procedures, and so on that are meant to treat everybody as an individual, not as a person of color, which is a racist term to begin with. Person of color versus white. It frames everything as whites are on one side, everybody else just come on this side. What are you going to put us all in this one amorphous category so that it's easy to hit whitey? Anyway, I hope I hope this doesn't get any censors from YouTube. This is a contentious issue like so many things. Power. It all comes down to power. Don't trust the academics. They're not in it for you. They are just like politicians. They serve for power. They aren't your friend. It's that simple. And I guess that's it. If you have anything else to add, I'd like to hear your comments on this issue. See you on the flip side. Peace.